On July the 16th, 2024, two brothers ran away from home and explored the Trans-American Trail. Well, as you can tell right off, this video is a little different than our other videos. This is part 10, and what's happened is we've had, throughout this trip, difficulties with our video equipment and our headsets. We had the Cardio Pack Talk Edge, which is a nice system when it works great, but it was off and on giving us trouble from the standpoint of just communicating with each other. It had two different systems that you could use. One was a Bluetooth and then another specialty thing they had. We tried both and we went back and forth using them. And sometimes we just couldn't even talk to each other. But the cool thing is that we were supposed to be able to link it to the Insta360s, our cameras. And so you can get voiceover. So you could hear both Danny and I talking on both cameras. That never worked. It didn't even work with one camera. It sometimes did. So in some of their videos, you can hear both of us talking, and other times you just hear me like talking to myself or Danny talking to himself. And then sometimes you hear me talking to myself and you hear no engine noise at all, which was kind of frustrating as well, because there's nothing worse than watching a video of a motorcycle going down the road and no sound, because I can only talk for so long, sort of. Well, one of the keys to this and why that I have to do this little video now is, at the end of every day, Dan and I would sit down and we'd banter about the trip. And sometimes we skip a day because when we came in, we were just exhausted. This was one of those days. We had gotten through Oklahoma. We had gone 3 days and we stopped at the Great Plains Bunk, which is a wonderful place to stay. And they have this system where you make a little donation, and if there's any beer, you could have a beer, which was really kind of nice. So we sit down and started bantering, and as you'll see the tail end of our banter, because we have no idea what happened to the first part. Either it didn't start to record when we asked it to, but it definitely was running at the very end, and we missed everything that we talk about. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our trip through Oklahoma. I'll show you some video of the roads, because Oklahoma is nothing like we thought it was going to be. We really were not looking forward to Oklahoma at all, simply because most of the videos we saw just saw boring, straight roads of yucky mud when it was present. So we were not looking forward to it. We knew the Great Plains Bunkhouse was going to be awesome, and it really was, but Oklahoma was awesome. One reason was everybody we met was incredibly nice. I mean, it was a great state. People there are wonderful, but the landscape was definitely not what we expected. I mean, there was tree-lined roads at times, and yes, there was the mud, but we didn't get into any of the mud. We lucked out. We didn't have any rain the whole time that we went through Oklahoma. We saw little areas of where there had been mud, and I think some of the mud we actually saw was just from irrigation, but you could tell that it got really pretty nasty, because in areas there was ruts from the mud. And you have to keep in mind that this is clay, so if there's a rut, it's like concrete when it solidifies. And in some areas there was ruddy clay and then sand in it, and made it for a tricky little ride. And there was plenty of gravel to keep things exciting. But it was a great, Oklahoma's awesome. So I hope you enjoy the videos that we put in there. I tried to give you a mix of all the different roads and scenery we saw in Oklahoma.
We're rambling. Okay, stop. Come on.
These cats are having a blast. This is you.
Now I get 2, 3.
You can have as many as you want.
That's good.
The Great Plains Bunkhouse is definitely where you want to stop when you're in Oklahoma, just before you get across into New Mexico. This is a wonderful place, and the people there are terrific. It's pretty much on the honor system. We got to meet not the owner, but the dad of the owner, And we got to hear some of the story that they were building the Great Plains Bunkhouse, and they kept seeing all these motorcyclists go by, and they wondered what it was. They thought they were a bunch of drug dealers, and finally one day they stopped someone and talked to him, somebody that they thought was broke down in the Jeep, and they asked where they were going and if they could help, and that's how they found about the Trans-American Trail. And this has become one of the definite oases on the trail to stop, to regroup, work on your bike, do laundry. They have a full kitchen that you can use. It's a great place.
There you go. There's the windmills.
Oklahoma is really hard to describe. From all the things that we watched on the TAT, it was just mud and clay. And wow, we just saw the windmills. We see these large expanses of flat road where you can go from horizon to horizon with gravel. Unfortunately, the gravel was kind of deep in places and a little shifty, but really not too bad. It was really nice riding, wonderful landscape. And this opened us up after coming from, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Tennessee, and West Virginia, where it was pretty, you're doing these mountain passes, looping back and forth, and you travel essentially, almost 100 miles, and you've really only gone, as far as a crow's fly, maybe 20, 30 miles. But it was fun riding in those areas, but this was kind of a different pace. It was really pretty nice. And then once you start starting to feel really comfortable with it, then what happens is it switches up to something totally different, which was really nice. There was a great variety in the ride. And then all of a sudden the gravel goes away and we get into this red clay. We start to get a little nervous because we're thinking, oh goodness, it's kind of cloudy. If we get a little rain, we're going to get some mud. And we've seen little signs of, where they had mud here and there. You can tell this is kind of recently graded, and we got really lucky with not catching up any mud. But you can tell in areas that, when it gets wet, this mud sets up like clay, and you get these ridges in the road that are really, it's like running up against a piece of rock and stuff in a ridge, and you're not expecting it. You think it's going to crumble, and it doesn't, so you get stuck in these little ruts. But all in all, it was a nice rides, and a lot of variety in the ride, on these different roads, going from gravel to this. And there's intermixed with this was a little bit of sand too, so you had to be awake. And like right through here, those ruts got to be a little tricky at times, but they kept you engaged. It was fun, and you can't help but think when you're going through these large expanses of flatlands what it must have been like with the people going out west in wagon trains. It just had to be really days upon days of monotony. It's insane how they were actually able to do that. But for us, this was an incredible ride. And we didn't have too much dust through here, which is great because, throwing dust up onto your brother is not a fun thing. We did end up riding side by side a lot when we got in areas that were dusty, but typically this was a really nice ride through Oklahoma. We really enjoyed it. There was quite a bit of wind, which gave us this great, the clouds really streaked out, really kind of neat. So it was almost surreal at this point. So we were really loving this trip. Oklahoma was really great. Cattle on the road, that was a surprise. We knew that was going to happen. But Oklahoma was our first run in with cattle on the road. We saw deer on the road through Tennessee and West Virginia, a lot of deer. But holy cow, cows on the road, I've never really experienced that before. But you know what? We found that the Oklahoma cows were quite well mannered compared to those that in Colorado and New Mexico. They were a little bit more rambunctious. The Oklahoma cows, they were very well mannered and would make room for us. And frankly, they could care less if we were there or not.
So I said that we were out of tree-lined roads in Oklahoma. Guess I was wrong.
Dan had to keep an eye out for me every now and then. I'd lag behind. He'd like to be a little bit of a speed demon down some of these roads. But as you can see, the road changes pretty dramatically from the tree line road back to the dirt and then on some blacktop. And you know, I hate blacktop, but every now and then it's just nice to get some miles down so we can make it to our campsite or the hotel. We tried to stay as camping as much as we could, but after getting a little smelly and a little tired and hot, sometimes a hotel was just a wonderful thing. And the wind here would just beat you to death at times. But it was a nice break to get onto the blacktop. I'd say we had less blacktop in Oklahoma than we did in the Tennessee section and the West Virginia section. But it was really nice every now and then. And you just, before you know it, you're off that blacktop, you're back out on the dirt again. And we're really enjoying the dirt. And it's, you get to the point where I can't wait to get back on the dirt. And our Moto Z's is what we were running on the back, and on the front we were running fatties, golden fatties, which did really well for us when we hit these areas of sand. And finally we got, this is our first and only area of real mud in Oklahoma, and we are very thankful that the trail gods looked out for us and we didn't have to go through that kind of stuff or bypass and stay on the dirt roads, because we'd heard enough horror stories about Oklahoma mud. But we got really lucky, and I'd say for the most part, we got lucky on this whole trip. We really only hit a lot of rain when we were in West Virginia and Tennessee, and it was a warm rain, so it really wasn't bad. So we lucked out leaving in mid-July. We came to the end of our first day in Oklahoma, and we were hot. We were exhausted. This is what exhausted old men look like when they're unloading their bikes. We decided to stay in a hotel because there wasn't any really good place to camp here. And the only restaurant we found in this area was Mexican, and I was not spending another night in that tent with my brother after he's had Mexican, because he likes refried beans. And it is just not a pleasant experience. No matter how windy it is outside, it's going to be incredibly windy inside that tent. And as you can see, I was just exhausted as he was. I'm trying to figure out where the hotel keys are in my pockets, and man, there's too many pockets in these pants. But we had a good night to get ready up.
All right, so it is Tuesday morning, and we've been on the trail for a while. On a road that's not a through road. Ha ha ha. How many times have we heard that, Danny? Yeah, grasshoppers. So there's cattle out here. Supposedly there's a cattle crossing coming up. But check out that road. That's a fun road. And a turtle crossing. Woo! Turtle, turtle, turtle. Yeah, we're doing good through here. The fun little road, and it is sand, Dan, by the way, just so you know. Yeah. You all right? Oh, yeah. Yeah, just kind of watch it. Yeah. The tendency is to want to fly through here, but I think I'm going to take my time, especially since I don't know what's coming over the top of that hill. Look at those grasshoppers. Take it easy. It's all good. It's not Florida sand, so it's doable. Trust me, I wish we had our tires, though. That front tire is gone. So you may make fun of us as we go through the sand, but if you saw what our front tires look like, oh my God. They are they are bald with one center knob. So watch it, buddy. Could have been, probably was. Nothing. Yeah, I think we'll just enjoy the scenery of this section and kind of go slow. Mother Nature's speed bump. It would be all right if it wasn't for that ridge. Straight. Now catch your breath because this is going to be tricky. Duck walk it if you have to. I'm the king of duck walk. I duck walk whenever I have to. Don't want to lay it down. Woo! Doggies. Catch your breath on after that one. Was that fun or what? Quack. Quack, 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 quack. I got my duck walk in this morning. Moto Z's to the. Yeah, I think it's exactly what that sign is saying. You know, I am so glad we got the Moto Z's for the back. Because if they ended up being like the fatty is in the front, we would have been a world of hurt there. So it was a good thing we changed tires in Lakeland. Not Lakeland. And Corinth at Lake Hill. Because those Moto Z's would have been bald by the time we got here. So fresh set really helped out. I'm getting over on the left. No, I'm not.
The TAT is amazing. If you think about when Sam mapped this out, a lot of things have changed. And, you know, one of the other things that we find is that we're always making U-turns, and it's like, do we really supposed to turn right here? And we're on a nice dirt road, and all of a sudden it says make a right, and we come across this, I always saw it as a rut where the right's supposed to be, and we take off, and we're looking at each other. It's like, is this really the route? Is this the TAT? And it turns out it really was the TAT. And it was a hoot to ride with the sunflowers and stuff. Dan took the lead. We had grasshoppers jumping all over us. They pretty much tried to stuff up the radiators. We had to clean them out. It was a hoot of a ride. It's pretty deeply rutted through here. That's how we knew exactly where we were going. You just get into a rut and follow it out. And, you know, we're double checking to make sure, you know, is this really the way? And sure enough, it brought us back out, and we were pretty excited because we didn't want to do another workaround. But it's always an adventure on the TAT.
Right. All right. Woo, doggies. Yeah, I recorded that. Hey.
I think these little roads like this are some of the most fun roads that Dan and I enjoyed. They were a little dusty. We just kind of hung back. Sometimes we'd ride almost not side by side, but front wheel to rear wheel, so you stay out of the dust. You could really tell when you looked at the air filters who was riding in the back, catching all the dust. So we took turns doing that, although I'd say Dan probably stayed in the back the most because he was a better rider. I think we felt more comfortable with him riding at my rear wheel than me riding at his rear wheel. This was a little shifty at places, but nothing really bad. I mean, our only issue was that we should have changed our fatties out when we were in Corinth at Lake Hill, but we still had a lot of tread on them. It was even questionable changing out the Moto Z's. I'm glad we did because they would have been kind of bald by this point. But it worked out really well. This really wasn't bad sand at all. It was quite enjoyable. It's nothing like our Florida sugar sand. So we just took it easy just because of the weight we had, and nobody wanted to fall. I don't like falling. You know, falling is not fun, particularly with all the gear on the back. I think we had a little too much gear at this point, and later on we thinned it out a little bit, which was a good idea. And we'll talk about that later. We're really enjoying the day, and we're really starting to come up on the little last leg of the day, and we pop up out of this this trail, and we come up on the basic dirt road that you find between the farming fields. And there's a lot of farming out here in Oklahoma. It's pretty broad, it's pretty flat, and this is what we saw a lot of, but the roads were actually well graded for us. I don't think they spend a lot of time after they get mudded up going back and grading them. And as we're on this part of the trail, we spy this little sign, which was a blessing. That sign right there, because we're trying to figure out where the Great Plains bunkhouse is. The sign told us. We were able to use the phone number because the phone number on that worked better than the phone number on their website. We got a hold of them, had to wait for them to call us back. And if that ever happens to you, don't worry about it. They're going to get back to you. And even then, if you don't get a hold of them, just go out there and wait around, and they will get back to you. It's really a wonderful place, and it's definitely an oasis in Oklahoma. So you can rest up and get ready to head into New Mexico, because New Mexico by itself was an interesting little prelude, and we'll show that up next in our next video. But the Great Plains, great place, wonderful people. Definitely put it on your stop.